All right, let's talk about our Braves. Lineup is out, but before we get to the lineups, Grant, we're getting a little bit more insight into these injuries and how long these guys are going to be out, specifically Max Fried, Ian Anderson. All right, if it's 2 months, what do we do? How do we stay the course with this pitching staff? Or, as Mike and I have been discussing, is Double A going to be forced to do something to upgrade the pitching roster?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, I guess, conundrum to be in, particularly if you're Alex Anthopoulos, because right now is not really the time that you can go out and make a lot of deals because there aren't going to be very many teams that are looking to wheel and deal their valuable trade commodities, because even if you're off to a bad start, you might want to just drive that market up to a fever pitch around the trade deadline and see if you can really get somebody to overpay for your premium, your quality starting pitcher who could be available on the trade market. But hearing from Max Fried a little bit yesterday and hearing from Kyle Wright earlier today, I mean, it sounds like for Wright, this is going to be something that could drag on for a couple of months. But, there wasn't a tear, nothing structurally wrong with him. But, he also didn't want to keep going with cortisone shots and things of that nature. So they're looking to, I think, bring him along a little bit differently. You might see some of those like platelet-rich plasma injections, those kinds of things that can kind of stimulate the healing in that spot and avoid a surgical thing because they just don't feel like that's needed. But either way, they've got to get all of that inflammation out so that he can get back to the thing that he does, which is throwing a baseball and utilizing that shoulder on a regular basis. So I guess to make a long story short, we're going to find out together exactly how the Braves can approach this outside of the internal options that they have at the AAA level, which of course we know is Dylan Dodd, Jared Schuster, and perhaps Michael Soroka.
Yeah, we ask you every day almost about Soroka. So it's funny, we really haven't heard much about where he's at. And I mean, when will we get a chance to see Soroka come to the rescue?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, Mike, is I don't know that the club necessarily wants the narrative behind it to be, hey, Soroka's got to come in and rescue us right now, because I just don't know that, and, life isn't fair, but I don't know if it's setting him up to succeed,
right.
And putting him in a fair position to expect him to come in and do something like that, particularly since we're coming up on 3 years since he started a Major League Baseball game. So I think they want to keep the expectations kind of, guarded at the very least. Does he have the stuff right now? I think he does. Is it maybe a matter of trying to knock off some of the rust, get more reps, and be ready to, come out and really be able to help the club win? I think that's as much or more than anything. And if you're a decision maker for the club, you want to put him in a position to succeed. And that, I think, is all baked into the Michael Soroka comeback bid. When is it going to happen? I feel like given that you don't have Max Fried and Kyle Wright for a couple of months, I mean, you're kind of getting to the point where if you were tempted to do it before, maybe we're rounding third and heading home towards him getting back on a major league mound and hopefully helping this big league club.
Grant, would they trade Vaughn Grissom if he was involved in some kind? If a team approached them and said, "Hey, we want to do a deal, but we want Grissom," would they even think about it? Where is he at on the pecking order as far as, hey, he's a guy that we would trade?
Yeah, look, nobody's untouchable outside of the obvious. I mean, you're not trading Ronald Acuna Jr., you're not trading Max Fried, obviously, injury notwithstanding. There is Spencer Strider. The guys that are signed to long-term deals that are going to be here for a while, they're not going anywhere. The veterans that are signed that, make sense to be here, clearly they're not pieces you're going to move either. But as far as prospect capital, young players or pieces that other clubs might come and want, really nothing's off limits, and it costs you nothing to talk. And I think that's kind of been, the read that I've gotten from my conversations with Alex Anthopoulos is we engage with these teams in these talks, and a number of different names can come up. We're not looking to throw things out or say, no, we're not doing that. Don't ask about this. Some of it's pretty obvious, but as far as, any young player that's in the Braves system, not really proven at the big league level, nothing's off limits.
Grant, I know we're getting into like a lot of hypothetical territory as Grant McAuley joins us here, but just to double down on what Carl was talking about with Vaughn Grissom, when you go back and look at the moves that Alex Anthopoulos has made, it's a lot. I mean, it's literally thousands of moves back and forth of pitchers from Gwinnett and options, etc. And then guys like Gosman, and that worked out. And Dallas Keuchel, I mentioned. Odorizzi was not really great. Is this a year, because this team is so loaded, that whether it is Vaughn Grissom or Travis, I know you got to give to get, getting some real frontline established pitching and not a guy who's kind of a journeyman. Is that even an option, or you think wherever we go, Alex will stay with the philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule any of that out. It honestly will depend on when other clubs are going to kind of decide that they're ready to move off of some of their pieces, because, you've got the expanded playoffs. which means other clubs are going to hang around as close to that August 1st trade deadline as they can now to just kind of see, are we in it? Are we out of it? Do we need to decide in the 11th hour that we might actually be in it when we thought we were out of it? It's kind of a fluid situation. And that, from talking to Alex about, trades and those kind of negotiations, I mean, it is literally a fluid situation. Some club might approach them with an idea that maybe they talked about 2 months ago and they're finally circling back to it, or something that they hadn't. It's kind of off the radar. So it's pretty difficult now, like on May the 10th, to say, okay, well, look at these 3 clubs and look at these 3 or 4 pitchers, and they're definitely going to be out there and they're definitely going to be available. They may not. Some other club may swoop in. Then maybe that club wins 7 out of 8 all of a sudden and decides, hey, we're 3 games on the wild card, we're going to hold. And that's just kind of, I think, what Major League Baseball wants as much as anything is for clubs to be incentivized to be in it with the expanded playoffs. But it can have some adverse effects on clubs that are looking to do some shopping around the trade deadline as far as availability and then driving up those prices. Nobody wants to sell early, I guess is what I'm saying, when it comes to their trade commodities.
Darno back in the lineup. You like the lineup tonight?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great lineup. I mean, you look at, Marcell Ozuna has hit pretty well in the DH spot, but you can't have Sean Murphy sitting around not DHing and not in the cleanup spot. So that's a move that you're going to make, 10 times out of 10. But getting Travis back in, I talked to him a little bit before the game. He is feeling a lot more like himself, and that was really what he was waiting for. He said in that road trip when they were up in New York, he went through all of his baseball activities and finally had that normal day where he just kind of woke up and was like, all right, I feel like myself again. And that's what they really needed. Obviously, when I did the rehab assignment, they gave him a day yesterday. But he's back in, ready to roll, and I think the Braves are clearly excited to have him back in the fold.
It is our man, Grant McAuley. Let's talk about last night. Again, everything perfect when Acuna gets on base. He's batting like a gazillion in the first inning. Then Olsen knocks him in, and you're off and running, and Pivetta starts hemorrhaging. I thought it was a great effort from Charlie Morton. One thing a couple guys asked me last night, and I guess the answer is no, balks are not reviewable, because that balk was the jivest thing I've seen. From second to third. Otherwise, Morton doesn't even give up a run.
Yeah, that was just gross. I mean, you look at the 2 runs that Charlie gave up yesterday. Look, I'll take that every time. It was a balk that wasn't a balk, and a home run that bounced right off the top of the wall. And if you're going to give up one solo homer in your start, you can certainly live with that. But I thought he looked so comfortable, so good. Everything was so crisp for Charlie yesterday. That's the kind of thing that you needed to see. And when I talked to Brian Snitker before the game, and I asked him, and I may have mentioned this yesterday, like, well, what does this mean now with no Max Fried, no Kyle Wright for Charlie Morton? He said, look, I don't want him, Spencer Strider, Bryce Elder, anybody trying to do more than they're doing. Just concentrate on doing their job, and we're going to figure this other stuff out. But, yeah, I just feel like that was the kind of start that you needed to see, even if you didn't want to put the pressure, the expectations on it. And Charlie is a guy that's capable of helping to carry this rotation and getting them where they need to get until they can get those reinforcements we were just talking about via trade or wherever, or getting the guys back that you want, which is Max Fried and Kyle Wright.